name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and I'll be again your host for today. We have two very important guests who will be taking us through a topic that speaks to the role the public has to play to minimize dependency on government. When we were trying to think about who to invite, we thought these two will actually befit the discussion that we're going to have today. I see we've got like few people that will be joining us who are saying they're struggling to join. But in the meantime, let me welcome everybody who has joined us today, and also specifically to our two guests, Dr. Mimmie Gondwe and Mr. Talifani Banks. I call him Mr. Talifani Banks, but his name is actually Mamafa. I think that is something that he identifies himself with. We're not gonna waste any time because we want to hear everything that you want to share with us and also teach us today. So I will hand over to you, and after you, we won't take questions. We'll allow Mr. Banks to also have his talk. Then both will be able to have engagements on both the presentation. So over to you, Dr. Gondwe, and thank you very much for having honored us with your presence.
Thank you very, very much, Tembi. And once again, thank you so much. I'm humbled that you even thought of inviting me. I know you and I interacted very briefly when I wanted some information from you regarding the Public Service Commission, and you know, sometimes you assume, yeah, that's the last time I speak to a person, and then you know, unexpectedly you contacted me and asked me if I would be part of this platform, this very you know, interesting platform, and I think it's a very important one, where, you know, people like me who are members of parliament are able to engage with members of the public on various issues. So thank you very much for inviting me. Let me just enrich what you've already said about me. I'm currently serving on the portfolio on public service and administration, hence my interest in information on the Public Service Commission. And I also serve on the ad hoc committee to amend Section 25 of the Constitution to enable expropriation without compensation. And I also serve on the Constitutional Review Committee. As Tembi indicated, I don't know whether you want to call me an accidental politician, but if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be a member of parliament, I would have said no, because I was very much entrenched in what I was doing in my work and supporting MPs. And I didn't see myself, you know, being an MP, let alone a politician, because, you know, there are always negative connotations around politicians and everybody. And I was having a conversation earlier with a friend of mine, and I was saying, I'm not even entirely sure what we're going to do to redeem ourselves, because everybody's convinced that we are all corrupt and we're all cut from the same cloth. And that is not necessarily very true, because we are individuals in our own right. We have different beliefs, different aspirations, etc. It took me a long time. I think I was first approached in 2013, and I only took that decision in 2018. So it took me quite a while to arrive to where I am right now. And this is my first term as an MP, and it's my second year. So I'm one of the new ones, very new ones. And I must say that 2 years down the line, I don't regret it. And I think I was, as Tembi indicated, I was the appropriate person for this conversation that we're having right now. And this is a conversation. And it's not like I'm here to instruct anybody or prescribe anything or any way of thinking. What I'm sharing is my very personal thoughts. And today I'm going to ask that you don't look at me as an MP, but look at me as an ordinary African woman, 44 years of age, who lives in Cape Town, originally from Mafikeng, ke bua Setswana. People are actually quite surprised for ke bua Setswana, because the assumption is that ha re bua Sekgowa ga re tlhaloganye our vernacular, and ke bua Setswana. Ke goletse ko Mafikeng, ke tsene ko Mabatho High. Yeah, I was fortunate in the sense that I think I was the first. I was in the first intake at the University of Cape Town, post 1994. So when I went to university, I was 16 going on 17. It was in 1995. So university was this big world for me. I originally didn't even want to study law. I wanted to study art, but my parents, being African parents, how can you want to study art? And stuff like that. And I look back now and I say, thank God. Not that I look down on artists, but I don't think I would have taken the route that I have right now if I was in the arts, for example. So I was 16 going on 17, finished my first degree when I was 20 going on 21. And I did a Bachelor of Arts in political philosophy because I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do and who I wanted to become in life. And then fortunately, I took some law courses and I took an interest in law. And that's how I then went on to study for an LB at Rhodes, and the rest is history. And then I went to Stellenbosch for my master's. And people always ask me, why Stellenbosch? You went from Rhodes to Stellenbosch. People view it as a traditional Afrikaans university, which it is. But nowadays, I think that there's a move within that university to accept people from all walks of life. And I must say, so from the master's, then I went on to study the PhD in mercantile law. And I'll tell you that I believe I am where I am today because of my two promoters who were Afrikaner males. And because they believed in me and they saw something in me, they saw a capability in me. And so sometimes I always encourage people that you don't always have to have the same color skin as I am to be, to be a role model to someone else, or anybody can influence your path and your journey. So be open to learning, because some people have a wealth of knowledge, and I wish sometimes we could look at one another through the lens of what can I benefit from this person? What can I learn from this person? Don't look at their education. I believe you can learn from everybody, irrespective of what they do in life or what their profession is. I always tell people that I love eavesdropping on people's conversations, whether I'm at the airport or wherever I am, to hear what people are saying and to learn, because you are never too old to learn. And so I encourage everybody to be open-minded when it comes to learning. But just getting down to today's topic, as I indicated earlier, I'm going to share what I think you and I can do in order to lessen or reduce our dependency on the state. And I'm also including myself, because as I'm talking to you, I'm also talking to myself. I don't claim to be the paragon of all wisdom and to know everything. So I'm just sharing what I think, what my thoughts are personally as Mimie, what I think you and I can do to lessen or reduce the dependency on the state. The truth of the matter is this: we live in a country that is fraught with inequalities, not just inequalities between, the different race groups and, the different groupings in society, but between men and women as well. The reality is also that we are currently experiencing high levels of unemployment, poverty, and poverty. I'm not just talking about rural poverty, but urban poverty. I don't know how many of you know this, but there's something called urban malnutrition, where, people who've done research have found that there's malnutrition even in urban areas. And there's always an assumption that, there is a risk of food insecurity in rural areas as opposed to urban areas. And unfortunately, it's not always the case. Even in urban areas, there's a risk of food insecurity. And the truth of the matter is that we are in a society that has high levels of violence and gender-based violence. Our economy is not growing as fast as we would like it to grow. Some people will even say our economy is not growing at all. And for the first time in a very long time as a country, we've had to borrow. And to make matters worse, or to compound matters, we are in the midst of a pandemic. And I'm sure you've all witnessed the unrest that our country, underwent, a few weeks back. And all of these things have set the country back. So to put it in very simple terms, we have very little money as a country. Our fiscus is under a lot of strain. Departments are having to cut back on budgets. Important departments such as the Department of Health and Defense, no department is spared from these budget cuts, are having to cut budgets. Now imagine if the Department of Defense has to cut its budget. What does that mean for our defense capability? Before I moved to public service and administration, I served on the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. So I don't know how many of you know that there are 3 ministers that report to that committee. So it's the Minister of Defense, it's the Minister of State Security. Well, now there's no longer a Minister of State, but then it was, and then the Minister of Police. So the Minister of Police would report to us on matters of police intelligence, the Minister of Defense would report to us on matters of defense intelligence, and the Minister of State Security would report to us on matters of what our intelligence services are doing. And by intelligence here, I'm talking about counterintelligence and of course, the generation of intelligence products. So, and they were all bemoaning the fact that they've had to cut their budgets. At some point, I remember the Minister of Defense warning that we would become, if we continued along this trajectory, would become like Mozambique, where some of the soldiers don't even have uniform. So the fact of the matter is that our country's fiscus is not, is under a lot of strain. And I'm sorry to paint such a bleak picture, but I'm also here to give hope, and to indicate that there is hope for our country. And that hope lies in my hands and your hands. As much as you're a citizen, I'm also a citizen. I may be a leader, but I'm also a citizen. So as I'm speaking to you, I'm also speaking to myself. And we've proven time and again that we're a resilient country, a country that is able to defy the odds and achieve what people, would have thought is impossible. A lot of countries on our continent look up to us and admire how far we've come. So I believe that all is not completely lost. And so now I'm going to move on to, dependency on the state. And then I'll tie in what I've said around, us, reducing our dependency on the state. Depending on the state is not entirely a bad thing, in my opinion. Government is there to serve the people. It's a government for the people and by the people. And that is why you've elected people like me to ensure that government serves the people. But what becomes problematic about dependence on the state is where you place a complete and total reliance on the state to meet all your needs as a citizen. In other words, you don't assume responsibility for meeting some of those needs. And the fact of the matter, as I indicated, is that our government currently has no money. And I think the NDP tried to prepare us for this eventuality when it suggested that we try and work with what we have, because really our economy is not growing as we would like it to grow. So when you place reliance on on a government or a state that is not doing well financially, it is bound to let you down and not be able to meet your needs. And it can't be blamed totally for that, and that's where you have to come in as a citizen and try and see how you can try and meet some of those needs without having to rely on government. And remember, a lot of the time, I think people think that it's only government that is able to meet their needs, but there are organizations, local and international organizations out there that you can also look to meet those needs. Mahatma Gandhi is often credited with the quote, "Be the change that you want to see." However, that is only the shortened or paraphrased version of what he actually said. He actually said, and I quote, "We, that is you and I, but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. In other words, we need not wait for government. We need not wait to see what government can do for us. It's about what you can do for government. How can you help government out of this situation that it's in? Or at least lessen the pressure that it finds itself under it finds itself under, the triple burdens of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And now we have the pandemic there. And now we have it has the added responsibility of trying to help people rebuild their businesses and their communities after the unrest we experienced. I mean, that unrest is said to have cost us between 8 and 25 billion. That is not a joke. And government is trying its bit in terms of trying to get those communities in KZN and Gauteng to rebuild themselves. The question becomes then, what role can you and I play in reducing our dependency on the state or government? In my view, we can reduce or lessen this dependency by becoming active citizen. An active citizen is simply one who knows that being part of any country means you have rights, you can exercise, but those rights come with responsibilities. You have responsibilities towards yourself and others. So the manner in which you behave and your attitude effectively contributes towards the development of yourself, others, your society, and ultimately your country. In other words, an active citizen does very little complaining, murmuring, and lamenting, and instead chooses to take charge of his or her future and circumstances and wants to be an agent of change. How do you become an active citizen? I'm sure some of you are wondering there that how do I become an active citizen and invariably reduce my dependence on the government or the state? There are many ways to become an active citizen. And the list I'm going to give you, the suggestions I'm going to give you now are not, it's not a closed list. So, and that's why we are having this engagement, so that if you've got ideas as well, let's talk about them and how, and this is something I would love to hear what people think about how we can lessen the dependency on the state as well. You can, for example, get involved in issues or causes that directly affect your communities or even the world. People have started NGOs, companies, and organizations just from identifying causes or issues affecting their communities or societies. I know people, for example, who've entered into the recycling business because they were worried about incidents of illegal dumping or littering in their communities. Instead of complaining about it, because what happens is that in some municipalities, you will complain about illegal dumping, but it's a spot, so it happens over and over again. And then municipalities kind of drag their feet in terms of trying to clear the spot, etc. And I know a gentleman in my constituency who decided to turn this around and stop complaining. And he started a recycling business. And he organized the youth in the area to also help pick up the rubbish, etc. And in that way, he also empowered them because now they know about recycling, and he's generating an income from this, recycling business that he started. You can also become an active citizen by becoming an activist for a political party or an NGO or an organization. They are social activists. You don't have to always be a political activist. And when we talk about political activists, I know a lot of people who've risen up the ranks of political parties by starting out as activists. From being activists, then they become ward councillors. From being ward councillors, they then assume, a higher position of being a member of a provincial legislature or a member of parliament. Some have even become MECs just from starting out as activists. And that means you are taking an interest in what's happening in your community, and you are there to help either your ward councillor and ensuring that service delivery issues are reported, and the like. In my constituency, what we've done is we've empowered our activists. So my constituency is George municipality. So what our activists are able to do is to directly report service delivery complaints. How do they do that? They have access to an app, and they've been given an idea of how to use the app. And so they're able to, to take charge and ensure that not everything is left to the ward councillor, and, and ensure that service delivery issues are logged with the municipality. And the app is so cool because you're able to track the resolution of that service delivery issue that you've reported. But I want to caution you, you get a lot of young people saying, oh, I also want to be in politics, etc. It's not as rosy as people make it out to be. And we are not as well paid as people think we are. In fact, I think for the past 2 years, we've not even received an increment because you're told you're a public representative. And this is what I want to say, that it's something that you do, but there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. You literally have no weekends. Look at me here now talking to you, or I would be in my constituency if I'm not at parliament, or I'll be doing some party work. On Wednesday, I'm going to be speaking at a summit that is going to be hosted by so you literally, you sacrifice a part of yourself, and you will not see your loved ones as much as you like to see them. You are always in the public space. Sometimes you are in the media, etc. So it's one way. If you come to the decision that this is what you want to do, you will get a lot of satisfaction out of, especially when you see that you are doing what you have been elected to do. We take an oath to serve the interests of the people that we serve, and no one else but the interests of the people that we serve. So you can become an active citizen by getting involved politically as well. If you don't run for public office, and that's the thing that we find people that are quite happy to be activists because they have a career going on somewhere else and they make a lot more than we would do. And so they just want to be an activist. They don't want to run for political office and the like. So it's not necessarily that everybody needs to run for political office. And sometimes in being an activist, there are opportunities that arise. Some political parties have offices, and there's a chance for you to go and work in that office. So there are lots of ways of making inroads in terms of ensuring that you alleviate the pressure on government to provide you with a job or with something to do. So do the things that you can do. As I indicated, pick up the litter, clear the overgrown areas, and assist the elderly in your area. Those are things that government should be doing, and we depend on government to do those things. But honestly, sometimes our government is simply stretched, and it could use our help. As I said, you have rights, but with those rights comes responsibilities. And, you know, you have a responsibility, and a good citizen is one who's able to see the gap and saying, but how can I help? As I indicated, to be the change that you want to see, you have to do the things that you want to be done first. And then you'll see other people will follow suit and other people will listen, you know. And I know people who've received recognition and boosts in their careers, in their lives, just by doing positive and good things for their communities and others. Another thing that I think people should do is to give. And I will tell you this, everybody has got something to give. Even if it's your time, you don't necessarily have to, as in money, it's your time, it's your skill. You know, I like that adage that says somebody, you know, could be crying for red shoes, for a pair of red shoes. They say, I don't have a pair of red shoes. Somebody doesn't even have feet. Everybody has got something to give. No matter how big or small, you'd be surprised what can make a difference in someone's life. And I have seen, again, where somebody, you know, in my constituency has green fingers, and he started a garden, a vegetable garden, and then he got young people to come and work on the garden, and now he's able to supply people with vegetables, fresh vegetables from that garden, you know, supply schools and the like, you know. And you don't always have money to start a business or to do something that will change your circumstances. I don't believe you need to have a lot of money or access to a huge grant and the like. You'll be amazed that people have raised themselves up just from the littlest of things, or having nothing. You know, some of the most successful people will tell you, I had 100 Rand in my bank account, and I managed to start a business, you know. So I don't always believe you need to have access to a huge grant in order to do some of these things. So as I indicated, for instance, you know, give your skill, your time, you know. I believe everybody's good at something that they can do, and you'll be amazed, you know, what you can do in terms of assisting. You know, maybe you know of an ECD in your area that is in need of a fresh coat of paint, and you can paint, you know. That's how you can assist. Government will not always be able to reach each, you know, corner and each crook and cranny. And so we appreciate the help that we receive from people that have seen that there's a need and go and try, you know, and meet that need. And as I was indicating earlier, that a lot of people now are looking at growing vegetables in their own backyards, because food security is a great concern. You know, we also have climate change at our doorsteps. I don't think there's any country that is not affected by climate change. And recently I read that you know, the climate change vulnerable societies by 2030 might not even exist. So climate change is real and it's there, and it's threatening food security as well. And it's such a pity that people are averse to farming and, you know, labor intensive work, because everybody sometimes wants to be in an office and have a cushy job and whatever. But I don't think that's how God intended it. You know, we do need the farmers because they ensure that we have food on our table, we have vegetables and the like. And I wish people would explore doing things that are different, things that are outside their comfort zone, and not necessarily always look at being a tenderpreneur. You know, some of your traditional roles and professions, being a tenderpreneur. You know, I take pride when I see young people take an interest in farming, because as I indicated, food is going to be a scarce resource at some point. You know, we've seen what's happening in Zimbabwe in terms of basic commodities such as your bread and your oil and the like, etc. You know, So we see that happening in certain parts of the world, that there will be shortages of food and stuff. And with climate change, as I indicated, we will experience food insecurity in some areas. So it's very important that we try and look at ways that we can ensure that we have food on our table, and not just your traditional ways or methods of ensuring that there's food on the table. And so another way is to harness and make use of the available opportunities that are offered by government, not only government, but NGOs and organizations. A case in point is scholarships. People always think that government is the only institution that offers scholarships. When I got the Fulbright, I was sponsored by the American government, by the Department of State. It wasn't a scholarship that was offered by the South African government, although the South African government was involved in the sense that they would then do the interviews and do all the admin and the groundwork, and then they would forward the names to the Americans to say, these are the people that we've chosen. So people tend to look to government too much and forget that there are NGOs, there are international organizations that also provide, be it learnerships or scholarships, or even entrepreneurial opportunities as well. So as I indicated, gone are those days where you thought this job is only for women, it's not for men, that type of thing. And today we have female firefighters, female soldiers, even female fighter pilots. So I would encourage people to get out of their comfort zones and do things that normally they hadn't thought of doing, because you might be surprised that you will tap into something that you turn out to be very good and successful in. So we must also be open to learning new things and harnessing every opportunity that is offered. Visit government websites, there are opportunities there that are being offered to people who have an interest in doing something for themselves. And I want to just emphasize this, that even where we are given a grant or or some form of help or whatever, there's a responsibility on us to ensure that we take care of what we're given and we don't abuse it. I always admire people who will tell you, I used to be on a social grant, but I took that money and I made good use of it, and now I have my own small business doing A, B, C, D, E, F. I had the privilege of traveling a lot, and I must tell you, in some countries, they really do not have access to social grants, to housing from government. Government does very little for them in terms of welfare, but you'll be amazed how they have thrived as entrepreneurs, because they've realized that the help that they get from government is so limited. As a case in point is Nigeria. I remember flying into Lagos, in Mohammed Matala Airport, that's what the airport is called there. And we landed at around 10 p.m. thereabout. And by the time we had gotten our luggage and everything, and it was already 12 and whatever. But I tell you, people were still busy selling, trading. And I was so shocked that, people there are so industrious, so determined to make money that there is really no time to sleep. They just work. You'll find someone selling water, walking around with a container on their head and going around and selling water. People selling scones or fat cakes, walking from street to in. And if I don't know how many of you have been to Nigeria. If you've been to Nigeria, it is humid. It is extremely humid. And it is so humid that I even have trouble adjusting in the first, in the first few days of being there. And you find a person is walking and they work and work and work. There is no work that they're not able to do, and they don't pick and choose, because it's survival of the fittest. It's either you survive or you don't survive. So, sometimes and then I look at some of our people who say, but I don't want to do that job because of A, B, C, D, F, G. I remember my first job, because my mother was very strict and she would always say when I came back from varsity, you're not going to sit here during the school holidays and do nothing. You have to earn your keep. So you're going to work towards your pocket money so that when you go to varsity, you've got pocket money. So she got me a job in Woolworths. So there I was in Woolworths, and I was in the food section of Woolworths, where there's a lot of work. So what happens in the morning, the trucks arrive, they brought the stuff, you have to price everything and then make sure that you pack it on the shelves, etc. It was a lot of work. And what that particular store used to do was they used to rotate us. So sometimes you're sitting at the till, and when you're done, your till has to balance, etc. And I thank God for those experiences, because I realized that, some people really have to work hard. But you know what? The good thing about it was that everybody in that store did their job very well and with pride and with distinction. And it humbled me to see that, for people, it was a matter of having a meal on the table or not having a meal on the table. So they were willing to do any job just to make ends meet and to survive. And sometimes I wonder whether that ethos or that culture is within our society, because we all want to be entrepreneurs, or some of us want to be politicians, because the assumption is that there's money in politics, but there is absolutely no money in politics. So, and then we tend to be tunnel vision about what we want to do, but you don't want to start somewhere from the bottom and work your way up to the top, and there's no greater satisfaction than doing that, because that you've worked your way up, you've earned your stripes. Once you're at the top, I've earned my stripe. I deserve to be here. So it's very important for us to also be industrious and be open to doing can in order to make sure that we earn money and we earn our keep as citizens. One of the other things you can do is to vote. Exercise your right to vote. Your vote could be the difference between getting those potholes in your area fixed or not. Your vote is your voice. I heard one of the ministers saying one time that the electorate has so much power. You don't feel the power before the election, but on the day of the election, you feel the power, because that when they cast their votes, they're saying something to you. They're saying we're either happy or we're not happy. So sometimes I wonder whether people are aware of the power that they have as ordinary citizens, the power to hold government accountable, the power they have in exercising that vote and making a point when they actually, cast their vote. I would really discourage people from being apathetic about voting, because apathy will not get you anywhere. And even complaining and not taking charge and doing something about it will not get you very far. You can complain and complain and complain, but as I indicated, sometimes you have to be the change that you want. If you don't want, you have to join your neighborhood watch and help, if there is one. You have to be the one that picks up a phone and reports a crime to the police. You don't walk past somebody who needs help or who's been assaulted, or you don't hear your neighbor battering away at the wife and you just keep quiet. There are certain things, and I'll speak about that later, that there are certain things that only you as a citizen can resolve and help government resolve. But just going back to the voting, the right to vote, a lot of lives were lost for us to be where we are, to have this book, the Constitution, which contains the Bill of Rights and all the rights that we enjoy as citizens. And I think that, you'll be doing a disservice to the people that lost their lives in the course of ensuring that you and I can engage as freely as we do. We can live where we want to live. We can move around. We can vote. If you don't exercise some of your rights, especially the right to vote, and as I indicated, with these rights comes responsibilities, and institutions such as Parliament are obliged to ensure that we enable you to participate in the processes of government so that you are able to, to take charge of what happens in this country and to also be involved in what happens in this country. And you may be asking yourself, how can you get involved? I can speak for Parliament, but I know that all institutions across local government, provincial government, national government are obligated. We are a country that prides ourselves on being a constitutional democracy, but more importantly, a participatory democracy. In other words, our democracy is hinged on our people taking part in how we govern. So in Parliament, for example, you can get involved by submitting a petition, submitting a private member's bill, taking part in public hearings, and making oral and written submissions on some of the issues that public hearings are held around. So the ordinary citizen has a lot of power. And I always say to people that when you exercise your power or your rights as a citizen, and you engage in violent protests, for example, you go directly from being a citizen with full-fledged rights to being a criminal. So when you decide that the best way to make my voice heard is to go and protest violently and destroy infrastructure, then you've gone from being a citizen to actually being a criminal. And I don't know how many of you know about the civil rights movement in the United States. The movement was able to change the course of American history through peaceful protests. And that is why the US democracy to this day is still standing and one of the most respected democracies. You may love to hate America, etc., but they have a very strong and very vigorous democracy. So in my humble opinion, governments that are won or established through violence have no staying power, but governments that are established through peaceful transitions like ours, they have staying powers and they will have the respect of the continent and the world. And that's why we to this day have the respect of the world and the continent. Our constitution is one of the most lauded constitutions in the world. And it's because of the way that we arrived at this point. So I would encourage you to please empower yourself as citizens. Make sure that you educate yourself. You get to know about the country and what you are really entitled to as a citizen, as well as what your responsibilities are as a citizen. I can never stop emphasizing the importance of education. Education is a very powerful weapon. And it opens you up to so many possibilities. It also broadens your horizons. It enabled me to travel, to study overseas. I studied in the US, I studied in Germany. It enabled me to see the world. And to some extent, it enabled me to be where I am right now. I think traveling does something to you. You get to see how other people live like. And I must tell you something, I must share something with you. When I was studying in the States, I was at the University of Cornell. So I got the Fulbright and I got to go there and work with a professor there. And what stood out for me was that the best performing students at Cornell is like your Ivy League institution in America, were not the American students. It was the African students. So the students from Africa. And that for me said a lot. And I think I got to see how, like I indicated, other African countries, education is not even a right, it's a privilege. So we are very lucky in this country that our government goes out of its way, and I could see how the African, students, they were so hungry for education and for bettering themselves and doing better so that they could go back. And they went back. Some of them went back and some of them are now doing very well in their countries. But they took the opportunity they had been given very seriously. And sometimes I wonder whether, we take the opportunities we're given very seriously, especially the opportunity to get an education. And sometimes you get people coming to me and saying, but I applied to this university and I didn't get in. And then I say, okay, let me have a look at your results. Or they say, I was at university and then I applied for this job, but I didn't get it. But when you look at the results, they're just borderline, and the reality is that the best companies in this country, in this world, want to attract only the best. And I think those African students I met realize that if they're going to work for the best, they have to give their best and produce the best results, and so sometimes it's disappointing that someone will think, okay, I'm entitled to this job, but they haven't met the criteria or their results are not up to scratch. As Tembi indicated when we started, I had the privilege of doing my articles with Weber Wenzel. And I don't know how many of you know Weber Wenzel. They take only the people with the best results, especially your law degree results. And I got employed a year before I started working while I was still studying. So some of these organizations, they recruit way in advance. They're very rigorous in their recruitment as well. They want only the best because, they're profit driven. And the only way they're going to make money and attract high-end clients if they have people that have done well at school, So sometimes I think we should really harness the opportunities we're given, especially the educational opportunities, and do well in our studies, whatever we're studying. And you're never too old, never too young to study. And some people just want to get 50s, and then you say, okay, now I deserve a job. I don't know where. And unfortunately, that is not going to be the case, but I'll carry on. And then a question you might be asking is that why do you have responsibilities as a citizen? One of the reasons that I think we have responsibilities as a citizen, and I mentioned this earlier, is that government does not always have the answers to the challenges or problems that we are facing as a country. And some of these, the resolution of some of these challenges and problems we're facing as a country lie within the purview of the citizen. So issues of crime, issues of domestic violence, even corruption. We would not know, we would have not known about the state capture phenomenon in our country if it were not for a group of citizens who took it upon themselves to actually expose it, So some of the things we're not aware of and we need your help, and things like domestic violence. It's about you sensitizing your boy child or your girl child about the fact that, it is wrong to hit somebody or to be violent towards somebody and the like. So some of these issues, it's in the power of, it's in our hands as citizens to ensure that we help government in curbing even violence. I strongly believe that violence sometimes starts from the home, especially gender-based violence. It starts from the home. A boy child is exposed to his father beating up his mother, and he can only give what he's learned, and that is violence.
Okay, I'll ask you to wrap up.
Yes, and even issues such as illiteracy, I don't believe they can only be resolved by teaching of reading in your children. So some of the best solutions honestly come from ordinary people and through innovations that are made by ordinary members of the public and not necessarily scientists or engineers. So I think my parting words at this point would be, it is very important for each and every one of us to make the most of every opportunity that we're given. I believe that everything big starts small, and so we don't always have to start big or go big the first time. I just want to encourage everyone on this platform to do their bit and be an active citizen, so that we can lessen the role that is played by government in bettering our lives and the like. Thank you very much.